Hi Sonia, it's Dan from Fratelli. I got your questions, Krista and I got your questions relating to the restaurant as part of the publication on behalf of Dee for River Realty, and I really love the questions. We're just really short on time, so I thought I would just do a quick video answering them. I also thought it might just come across nicer like this, and also perhaps once the format has been done by yourselves and everything's published, I thought I might post this onto our social media as well. I love the questions and I thought they were really lovely and thoughtful, and I thought it would be nice to share both just Dee, who's been a wonderful customer of Christine and ours for so many years now, and with River Realty, plug them as well. Just thank you so much for so many years of beautiful business, and Dee, such a beautiful person. We thank you so much for your support, and also just for thinking of Christine and I with this beautiful interview. So I just thought we'd go through them now. The first question is, what sparked the idea to open Fratelli Roma in Maitland, and why did this feel like the right place for it? So, well, Christine and I love the industry. Christine worked front of house at many great restaurants in the Valley. We met initially at Shaky Tables, which was at the time one of the best restaurants in the Hunter, and Christine also worked at Tower Lodge, and which is a really prestigious accommodation facility out in the Valley. And I was a chef, and we wanted to open up our own restaurant. There was a bunch of reasons behind that. A lot of the forefront of those were just the difficulties of the industry. I always found it to be, for two people that loved what we did, a lot of anxiety and a lot of anger within a lot of the restaurants we worked. And we just wanted to open up our own place and do it, I guess, our own way, and just be able to have a nice place that we own together and try to just share our passion for the industry with our customers. Why did it feel like the right place? We just love Maitland. Kristen and I used to go to Mania Thai a lot when we first started dating. We both have beautiful memories of that restaurant, and people always talk about our food in the Hunter, and but that restaurant has been at that same premise at the other end of High Street to us for way longer than Fratelli and 305, and for sure we used to love going there, and there wasn't a lot else in Maitland. We thought it would just be a beautiful place to have a restaurant. And then Christine found 305 High Street in the newspaper. It was a vacant building, it had been abandoned, it had the right parts downstairs to be able to make it work on a cheap budget. We didn't have a lot of money at the time, so all those things sort of, I guess, correlated together to make the decision as why we started here. But for sure, we specifically wanted to open a restaurant in Maitland. We just love the coming down here, and for sure we fell in love with the building the moment we sort of stepped up inside of here. We fell in love with this property, the house, and to this day, it's something that we still love very much. Second question, the name Fratelli Roma carries a strong sense of identity. What does it represent for you personally? To be honest, not a lot. It does carry a strong sense of identity. And I know in Italian culture, particularly so. But at the end of the day, I guess there wasn't a lot of that went into it. At the time, my brother and I were running the restaurant front and back. Nathan was sort of managing front of house more primarily than Christine at the time. We'd had kids, and I guess it was just, we were brothers. Fratelli, common thing amongst Italians, with family running them together, and Roma just representing the capital, Roma representing the capital of Italy. But as well as that, there's just the...
305, obviously, or Fratelli Roma, 305 was here first, and then we
Yeah,
renovated.
that's true. Yeah, Fratelli Roma came about 7 years after we had 305 High Street, 305 Restaurant and Cafe, which was a modern Australian restaurant as well. So we were getting out of fine dining, I wanted to go back to Italian food and the type of food I trained in, and yeah, as well as that, Fratelli Roma, just the heritage of that name. Fratelli Roma means the legend of Romulus and Romulus, the two brothers that founded the location of where Rome is formed today, and the whole thing about them being raised by a wolf. And so there's that sort of play on it as well, and for sure that is also a lovely homage to those things. But I guess, yeah, the truth of the matter is there isn't a strong significance as to why that name came to be. Italian food is deeply rooted in family and tradition. What role has your own heritage, upbringing, or personal food memories played in shaping the menu? This is another great question. Italian food is deeply rooted in family and tradition. The first, I dropped out of uni and was looking for something to do with my life, and found an apprenticeship at an Italian restaurant in Karratha, in the Pilbara of all places. And that was a very, very unbelievably traditional Italian family. So it was owned by a gentleman by the name of Joe Damati and his wife. And my boss was their nephew, who was half Greek, half Italian heritage. His name was Justin Hatziathanasios. And the first year and a half of my apprenticeship was in that family and in that restaurant. And for sure, like, I can't even begin to express just how Italian they were. So that was wonderful, being able to have such a, traditional and raw experience into an Italian family and an Italian restaurant. So that definitely shapes the menu today. And a lot of the dishes today, a lot of those dishes come directly off that first restaurant. I always say to apprentices and people, it's important to not just, the food that that goes into the chef you are, is a day to pay homage to where those things came from. And for sure, I always pay homage and respect to Justin and that first menu, because a lot of the dishes that are on the menu today come directly from that restaurant, including dishes like the Siciliano, which is one of our favourite pastas, and that used to be made with cacciatore sausage that their grandfather sent up, and the scallopena alla panna, which is veal with cream, is another dish from there, and the bolognese and things like that. I mean, I came from a very simple family in many ways like that. My mum was a wonderful cook, and my grandparents were wonderful cooks, but traditional Australian family and Wesley and cooks, and food. So food was always a big part of life, as in a lot of those traditional families, but not in that way. And I think Justin cooking bolognese for one of my first ever sort of staff meals, and when I started my apprenticeship, and thinking, fuck, I don't want to have bolognese, and then just being like, holy fuck, this is just amazing. So, and things like today, my bolognese, for sure, I always think about Justin and his bolognese when I am making it, that I want to make it in memory of that man and those kind of dishes. So, yeah, and then I think it's just all people with food, Christine and I love doing the restaurant for very different reasons, and that's just relating to the second part of your question. I guess it's personal food memories, and that's what the industry is all about. Some of my fondest and our most fondest and beautiful memories for sure are times at great restaurants with my wife, and sitting at those places and enjoying a meal together. And that's for sure what is a big element about what keeps us motivated and loving what we're doing at Fratelli Roma today. The next question, how do you balance honouring traditional Italian recipes while keeping the experience fresh and relevant for a modern Maitland audience? So that's another great question. I think that's what makes the restaurant great. Today it's just 20 years of doing it, and you get to a point where you just, you have, a confidence and faith in what you're doing as a chef and what you're doing service and that with the restaurant. And the food's just a reflection of that, really. The traditional parts of the cooking our ragu and bolognese, the dishes I talked about before, you know, they come from strong fundamentals in Italian cuisine. But then, you know, outside of that cuisine, there's been many other years working in, you know, some of the country's best, like modern Australian restaurants and fusion restaurants, and so you have all those elements too. And you know, I think that's the wonderful thing about food. It's just over the period of your life, if you're doing it, you just, at the end of the day, the menus you're doing and the food you're serving is a reflection of what you enjoy, or it should be a reflection of what you enjoy and what you enjoy serving. And I guess that I don't really put a lot of thought actually into like trying to keep, you know, the Maitland audience happy, as it sort of said. I think that if you're doing a good job and you're serving good food and you've got a nice restaurant with lovely people working in it, like my wife and Nathan and all of our staff, and they're doing what they love, then I feel like it's always going to be relevant. I hope it is, because, you know, that's what hospitality is. It's been around for one of our longest industries, you know, in terms of, you know, as a fundamental part of culture. And, you know, as long as people still have that time to share and wanting to enjoy food and dining out together, then hopefully restaurants like Fratelli and the other beautiful restaurants like us in the Hunter and around the world will always be relevant, because I really believe that, you know, the things we're doing are part of our culture, about what makes us human, and is a very, very important part of, you know, being happy and being able to share that with each other is just an important part of what I believe makes a happy life. When someone walks through your door, this is a really lovely question. I've both read them before. When someone walks through your doors for the first time, what do you hope they feel before they even taste the food? I guess that was just what I was saying before. You know, like, I've been trying to do a podcast for ages, and again, one of the things I wanted to talk about was just, you know, reviews and some of the stuff you get back sometimes. And, you know, they always get me down. They get me down because, you know, at the end of the day, like my wife and I, we really do care, and all that's not, you know, for the restaurant. And then I feel like, you know, that's why our staff and, you know, all of the beautiful people that work here, like, people always say, oh, you know, you've got such great staff. And we do, you know, there's just beautiful people. But, you know, those people here, I think, because, you know, we love what we do, and that makes that whole thing enjoyable. And the other people here love what they do too. So it makes just a very kind of homely and nice experience. And I guess if people would feel anything when they walk through the door, that it's that this is like a restaurant that's owned and operated and has people within it that really care, love what they do, and that it's not just a job for us. You know, it's all I've known for my whole life, all that my wife has known for her whole life pretty much. And, you know, a lot goes into that from myself and my wife and the commitment you make to all that, but also to all the staff and all the people here. So, you know, they're all very special, and I hope people get that feeling of just of care and love and just a nice place. There's often a rhythm to Italian dining: long conversation, shared plates, wine that lingers. How intentional are you about creating that atmosphere at Fratelli Roma? I don't know about this one. I kind of think, you know,
Especially in today's society.
yeah, the thing is true of Italian dining, you know, long conversation shared. And that's one of the things I think is nice about, you know, what was the last two questions and the relevance to this one, you know, is that people just sometimes forget, like, you know, it seems like, you know, in modern society, people are becoming more isolationist. You know, it's like antisocial this, fear of this. And, you know, restaurants, you know, you can go to a really sterile and very fancy fine dining restaurant and sit in a very, very regimented space and, like, you know, have very, very, like, austere service and all these things. And that's great. But restaurants like ours, and I think Italian restaurants and what you're referencing to in relation to all those things is just, they're not really like that. They're social places, and most restaurants traditionally were those kind of places. And our restaurant is. I think that there's sometimes you come in and half the people in the restaurant know each other, and everyone's like walking in and blah. But that's just like, I guess some parts you have to just embrace that as being part of like the food culture and definitely part of Italian food culture. But then Europeans in general just understand food better than Westerners. And Westerners continuously are losing our identity further with those things. I feel, that it's just people are either just forgetting completely, like that it's just something you do to satisfy a need. Like I'm going to go to a pub and just feed myself, and you forget about all the other things, like the service and the fact you're going out with your wife, or you see couples sitting there or on phones across from each other, and families of kids on like iPads, and I think that you just forget about the fact that the cultural part of it. And I feel like Europeans are just in touch with that more than Westerners in general. There's just a lot more that goes into what food is in those cultures. So and those conversations, and the rhythm of dining, sharing food, wine that lingers. I mean, they're nice words to describe something that I think people just forget about with food. That it's about like sharing company, sharing time together as a family, and those things mean if you start like sharing those dishes and sharing conversation and wine lingering, for me that just means that let's just stop, put our fucking phone away and sit there and just look at my wife or enjoy time with my kids. And I think that's very, very, very important. And again, probably a really lovely question. Is there a dish on the menu that feels especially personal to you, one that carries a story? All the dishes on the menu carry a story, and they're all personal to me, every one of them. Like I mean that sincerely. Like, I could go on and on and on about it, and I can't because I have to answer it. But for sure, every single dish on the menu has a story, either by someone who taught it to me in my time as a chef, or how we created it ourselves, or and that's what makes food beautiful. And I think people need to remember that more when maybe they're like, I know for myself sometimes, people say some stuff and I find it quite hard to take, and I don't mean that in an arrogant or angry way. It's just, for me, it's like when you're working in the restaurant every day and you like put so much emphasis on and commitment into serving food, and you kind of get panned for stuff like that sometimes. It can be quite personal, and a lot of that just because behind that dish is a story, nearly always. So I'd say that if I had to mention specific dishes, the bolognese, because it came from my first boss, and to this day has like a very strong influence on the chef I am and the way I approach food. And then probably like, elements of dishes that just are personal to us. A brulee, because, it's a traditional baked brulee, and it was a dish kind of was a lot of forgotten about, and it was a crap dish. We had a lot of problems with it back in the 3 or 5 days. I remember having Christine's like, we got another crappy review about the brulee. I'd been taught from another chef, and we were just doing it like that. And she's like, maybe we should just take it off the menu. And I was like, I don't want to take it off the menu because, it's an important dish to have. And I threw the recipe out, and I just started my own recipe from scratch, and I worked at it for a long time, and it's just a beautiful brulee. It's baked, it's set, it's lovely, and it's unique to the restaurant. And those kind of dishes are the kind of things I love. Our vanilla ice cream recipe, and just dishes like that you just, you put a lot of work into those individual recipes, and people would eat them and probably not think much of it. But yeah, for sure, when you think that's the best fucking ice cream in Australia, like it is. I just think it's a great recipe, and I love that kind of stuff. Running a restaurant as a couple brings its own dynamic. How do you each bring your strengths into the business, and how do those roles complement each other? I've always another great question because, you know, running a restaurant with your wife is just hard. You know, running a restaurant is difficult enough, and doing that with, you know, your wife and having a relationship amongst all the stress of a business and what that means is, you know, unbelievably difficult. And to like do that for 20 years together is really, sorry, car just coming up, is really intense in many ways. And I know it's one of the things I think that you often take for granted, to be honest, like how, you know, not just what goes into the restaurant and all the aspects of that, but also just, you know, the reliance you have on your partner, your wife, and someone you're sharing your life with and you're running a business with. It's a lot, and I'm thankful very much more than ever in my life for my beautiful wife and everything that she's brought to this restaurant. So we have an amazing relationship, and our business relationship is a reflection of that. I think Christine does all the aspects of the restaurant that probably require in many ways the most work and receive less of the, you know, credit for it. You know, she does all the accounting, all the organising of our bills and suppliers, and all the rostering and wages, and a lot of our social media stuff, and all the customer inquiries and wine lists, you know, our alcohol, all the costings of those things, and you know, the business day-to-days and the business decisions, and the way we run the restaurant. And a lot of that stuff is is what I do. But I think, you know, honesty and love, understanding, patience, forgiveness, you know, the things that I know we just have like strongly in our relationship. And I think honesty and, you know, is just a big part of that, because, you know, making a business, running a business, you know, you need to be honest with each other. You know, if something's not working or you don't feel like someone's doing the right part, you need to be honest and be able to accept that from a business point of view, and also in your relationship side of things too. So, and I just love, you know, we love each other very much. No one could ever comprehend, like, you know, just the difficulties, especially like the first 10 years of running this restaurant. Just so much sacrifice and so little in your relationship outside of the long commitments to work. So, you know, you have to put so much aside to just keep going and make it. So, especially the first 10 years. And so just having a lot of love for each other and a lot of honesty, and things have made the restaurant is what it is today. So we both love what we do too, and I think that complements each other. You know, you can have to keep doing it. Restaurant, in all business, is kind of like a long game, you know. So you have to be able to stay motivated and stay passionate, and that has to come from each other as well. So supportive and all those kind of things. Mayland has a growing and evolving food scene. How has the local community embraced Fratelli Roma since opening? I mean, everywhere has an evolving and growing food scene, and, you know, you have to evolve and grow with it in some aspects. And I feel like we have, over the years, Fratelli, it's definitely sort of settled into its niche, and I think it's important with business to grow and evolve, but also, you know, you need to set a core set of, you know, you need to decide what your business model is, what you're going to do, and then you need to make sure you've got that right. You need to work at that hard, and then you also need to just make sure you don't change that too much, because you establish your core group and your loyal customers, and you need to build on that. And if you go changing everything or changing things too much, then you're always resetting your core customers. And I think that's one of the key parts. I guess running the question before too is that the stability in our relationship, the stability in the restaurant. This restaurant is owned and operated by myself and my wife. I run the kitchen and I work in that kitchen every day. And, outside of family, both of us, that's what we do. Christine works floor and runs those aspects of that business. So there is stability in those aspects of it. And I think that's important too. Evolving and growing within the dimensions of what you're doing is good, and everyone needs to adjust. And I think COVID and things like that we made the decision, adding takeaway, and that has become a big part of our business since COVID. But I think essentially, that's always a balancing act between evolving and growing, but also making sure that I see that a lot in restaurants. It's like, you start out doing something and then, you lose track of that over a couple of years, and then you kind of end up in a situation where you sort of, the people that have been going there for a year, you change chef, or you change, something important in that business changes, and then, you reset on that core set of values and objectives that business had, and then all the people that were there initially, you kind of come back again and they're like, oh, it's different to what it was. So that is part of it. And I think like all local communities, the second part of the question, how's the local community embraced Fratelli Roasters opening? Well, Maitland's everyone always said we kind of Maitland, it's a hard town to crack. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard that. And that's definitely true. But I think that's probably the case of all communities, that value their community and the people in it. Those communities are protecting, people that aren't new and haven't been just starting out, and that they've been going there for many years. And like Mania Tire, I talked about initially when we started the interview, and I feel like always, small towns are going to take a while to embrace, but I feel like, Maitland has one of the most unique and old, established sort of social cores of any sort of most towns, probably in Australia. Definitely in Australia, one of the most sort of, old, how would you describe it, just family history. There's families that have lived here for multi-generations, and there's a very, very strong core of society within the city. And I feel like that core also recognises hard work, good people, and determination. And I feel like that's like, if anyone was going to start a business anywhere, then, having good values, trying to represent good values with your business and the way you operate it and the way you treat people, and putting the work in over a long period of time and doing your best, then, over time, everyone will embrace that. And I know Christine and I do in other businesses and other people that we support through the restaurant as well. So, it's one of the most touching things about the city, I think, and one of the most beautiful things about operating a restaurant in a city or a town, as opposed to kind of being in a predominantly tourist area, is that you just, it may be harder to access customers initially, and might be a bit more of a difficult road to get there, but the journey is just very personal, very touching, and the kind of destination at the end of that with your business can be, very, very rewarding as a result, because you end up with just, a big group of people that essentially become your family. It's just one of the most beautiful things about the restaurant today is just, that you share so much with so many different people that at the end of the day are customers coming to your restaurant, and that is a very lovely thing. There's small behind-the-scenes details, sourcing ingredients, plating style, music choice, wine selection that guests might not consciously notice. It's We have a very protective cavoodle. Are there small behind-the-scenes details, sourcing ingredients, plating style, music choice, wine selection that guests might not consciously notice, but that matter deeply to you? Well, all those things matter deeply to me. Like, sourcing ingredients is huge. You know, I'll only source Australian product. I won't source any overseas product, with the exception of very high quality specific items that we source for those reasons. So like our Canadian sea scallop, which are, you know, one of the best products in the world. Our prosciutto is sourced from Italy. You know, our Reggiano Parmigiano is sourced from Reggiano, things like that. But all of our other products are seafoods. I only source sustainably farmed seafood. I only source line caught fish. I won't use any imported shellfish or prawns. We have a great loyalty to all of our suppliers. I won't change suppliers. My suppliers are like family, and those things are motivation things in relation to why I love working. And all of our wines we source through, you know, personal contacts and things like that. So, you know, there's a reference about the ingredients and that before, having a reference, but like a lot of the wines have, you know, deeply personal, you know, things to Christine and I in terms of wines that are special to us, but also just, you know, the people behind those wines, you know, wineries like Scarborough or Tyrrell's, Tomo from Thomas Wines, and, you know, there's, you know, all these things behind all that stuff that, you know, when you like, oh, you think that wine, and you go, oh, I remember when we had that wine for the first time, or, oh, you know, someone says, oh, I love the David Hook Pathana Shiraz, and well, David Hook is just, you know, a wonderful local winemaker in the Hunter Valley. You went to school with my mum. You know, there's always stories behind all that stuff. The plating style and, you know, it's just a factor of all of your life. And the music choice is a lovely one because the music's really personal to the restaurant. I love the music. You know, we play the same music out in the restaurant as we do in the kitchen. So, you know, there's a lot of interaction between that stuff with us in the kitchen singing or enjoying music. Same with the floor staff. It's all hand-picked by myself. I put a stupid amount of work into the music. What does the perfect night at Fratelli Roma look like from your perspective? Just a full restaurant. You know,
No, not necessarily being full, just that.
You know, it always feels great.
Yeah.
When it's busy and of people just enjoying themselves. Yeah.
Staff enjoying themselves.
The staff, yeah, I love it. We have a great team. The kitchen is just machines. You know, there's such a group of just, you know, unbelievably awesome people. They have the food set every day, and then we have just the most fantastic group of floor staff. You know, my Christine, you know, to this day loves working. You know, she looks forward to it. You know, my brother Nathan has been here for 12 years, and even now he stepped back, he still comes in for Fridays and Saturdays and the Tuesday nights and loves working here. And Kate and Sam, and you know, Kate's got her own fashion business, and Sam is an engineer studying engineering at university. The guy's a genius, you know what I mean? Like, he could be, you know, they come into work to you know, they love what they do. And I love watching that part of it too, just watching all of us, like, you know, doing a job together, and it's just the best feeling. You know, I always think it's just like performance or, you know, stage shows, or, you know, you have to have all these things in the right place, yeah? Like all the ingredients ready to go for your menu, all the things ready. Everything has to be right, because even couple of little things going wrong and service goes to shit, and, you know, then you've got customers whinging and yelling. or people being cranky. And if you're on the floor and you've got just a bunch of people, getting cranky at you for food being slow or food not being great, then you're not going to enjoy yourself either. So, there's such a strong reliance on each other, floor and front, like front of house and kitchen. You're relying on, your floor staff doing a wonderful job of customers, writing the dockets right, doing a good job of service, meeting and greeting people, remembering customers. Our floor staff, they've been here for so long, they remember all of our customers. And the kitchen doing all that stuff too. So, yeah, that's a great night. I love both of us do. We just love that kind of, the buzz you get from it. And just seeing a restaurant filled, I love it being full. I do. I just take it personally. I always will. If the restaurant's not busy, then I just feel like we're not doing something right. Or, it's food to me is just as personal cooking for our customers as it would be cooking for your family or friends. I just, love that part of it. And I love the whole vibe of just having a restaurant like ours where it's, you got the sights and sound of food, and you look around, you see people laughing, enjoying themselves, and the smell of Parmesan cheese on pasta drifting through the kitchen, dishes like the garlic prawns going out in a sizzling pot, and you're smelling all that stuff, and I just love it. Yeah, I love the open kitchen. I love the interaction between customers. I love people coming up and saying what a great night it was, and it's just, I just love hospitality. We both do. It's just something very unique about the industry that is very rewarding and makes it such a thing. And Fratelli Roma has great nights like that all the time too. That's what I love most about it, isn't it? We don't really have bad nights. We just put so much work into being ready, and everyone here is such beautiful people that we just have so many great nights. It just keeps you coming back, and it's really lovely. Looking ahead, what do you hope Fratelli Roma? How do you hope Fratelli Roma evolves, and what kind of legacy would you love it to hold? It's a really beautiful question too, and something that we think about all the time. The building was built in 1865. Sorry. The building was built in 1865, and when Christine and I started here, we were two people, we had no money, and we just wanted to open our own restaurant. And, when I say we fell in love with the building, we fell in love with the building. I remember this kind of shitty commercial space downstairs, and it looked nothing like what it does today. But I remember the real estate agent Rhonda taking us upstairs. I just remember feeling this very strong feeling of just destiny. And we've fought so hard to stay here. Just through all the early years, and then when we turned into Fratelli Roma, my dear friend Lee, who used to come to the restaurant all the time, and at those hardest times when behind the story, 20 years is a long fucking time. So there's a lot that just goes into that. And I'm just really proud of it. I'm proud of everything. I'm proud of the fact that we managed to make it through all that time. I'm proud of the restaurant and what it stands for. I'm proud that we worked so hard to earn it. And I'm proud of what we've done with the property. This is, it was built in 1865. It was a dilapidated shithole old building. It rained through 3 stories every time it rained for years. The ceilings had holes in them. The front of the building was fucked. My
my wife and I had faith in each other and kept that faith in each other, and we fixed this place ourselves. We spent years just renovating it and slowly fixing it up ourselves. And every single wall in the building has been painted by my wife and I, and nearly all the work on the restoration has been hand done by myself. And we've raised 3 beautiful kids here, and the restaurant means more than what anyone would ever understand. That's just being honest. They would have no idea. So I think about it all the time. I think about the fact that, this building's been here for 250 years, and that another 250 years from now, this building will still be here because of the fact my wife found this place in a newspaper article, and these 2 young people came to this place and fell in love with it, and then, fixed it up so that in the right way too. We'd put so much work into this place, and that, it'll be here a long time from now, and that people will, I hope, look back, and even if the restaurant isn't here anymore, that there'll be people that remember it and remember us. So it's sorry to break up, but that's a very beautiful question, and everyone wants to leave a legacy in life. My wife and I have great grandparents. Her grandfather Richard was a famous trotter, and he's in the Hall of Fame for the Sporting Hall of Fame for New South Wales, and was actually rescued in the 55 flood from Raymond Terrace, plucked out of the Hunter River after being flooded off the signal box here in Maitland after a helicopter crashed, rescuing them from the thing. And my grandfather, Kevin Mungley, was a dairy farmer, primary producer from Singleton, and I was at both their funerals, and I remember just being very touched by the fond memories people had about them, and all the things that you do in your life that add up to being a legacy for the one day when you're no longer around. And I would love to leave a legacy of just kindness and just good memories with the restaurant and for what we've done here. So yeah, that's it. Sorry for getting emotional in the end, but I guess that's just me and my wife, and it's definitely part of what makes the place what it is. Thanks very much for the questions. It was in the 20 years I've done this and all the kind of articles and stuff you do, I've never ever seen such a group of thoughtful and beautiful questions. So it meant a great deal. And thanks very much.